Welcome to Breaking the Cycle of Poverty, featuring Jay Height, Executive Director of Shepherd Community Center in Indianapolis. My name is Tim Ayres, and I'm your host for these conversations that explore why poverty remains such a persistent problem in the United States. On this episode, we'll talk to Tim Ayres, the longtime teaching pastor of Grace Church in Noblesville, about his congregation's partnership with Shepherd, as well as how to thrive in ministry for the long haul. Jay, we have a very special guest today. Would you introduce him to our listeners?
Well, first of all, he's my friend. He's my brother, and I love Tim Ayres because Tim and I have been friends for a long time.
Yeah,
and lots of conversations, and is someone who I learn a lot about, learn a lot from, and I am thankful that he could be here with us today to talk about the partnership we've had. But he has just retired. He's retired all of 3 weeks, and so it's still not out of his blood, but
Right.
He has served well, and he ended strong. And I think at a time when we read a lot of folks who don't do that, it's important to hear and to learn from someone like Tim.
And Tim, you served in the ministry at Grace for 26 years?
We're 26 and a half, almost 27.
27. How were you able to thrive in ministry for that long?
Well, I think part of it is that the church is 34 years old, and I was part of the team that actually planted it in the beginning.
Yes.
And the vision that we had, and really the call that we'd had into the community was such a strong one. I never really lost the sense that what we were doing by following where God was leading us was ever anything that I would grow tired of, I would grow tired.
Sure.
But it was never an aspect. There was never an aspect of thinking, this isn't worth it. It was always, this is worth it. No matter where God was taking us, it was something that was worth giving my life to and working alongside of the others who are giving their lives to it. So.
And Jay, you've been in ministry, 30 years at Shepherd now. So both of you have long tenures in one place in ministry. But yet at the same time, we hear all the time about young pastors who are burning out and leaving the ministry. What advice would you offer to those young pastors out there about how to sustain it for the long haul?
Tim and I met right before this, as we often do, and we were talking about that the reality is, as a mutual friend of ours says, you always have a low degree temperature of sadness.
Right.
Jesus was a man of sorrow. By the very work that we do, it's a bit lonely. And so I think that's why my relationship with Tim is so essential to me, because of those challenges. And then I think what happens is, where many folks who we could talk about over the years that we've known who haven't ended well, I think they allow that loneliness to be filled with bad things. They allow Satan a foothold, and I think there have been plenty of folks who've spoken into my life, and as Tim said, I know what I'm called to do.
Right. I would say, too, that in this period of time that Jay and I have both been in ministry, there's been an awful lot of emphasis from it's from inside the church, but there's this thing about success and business thinking and all kinds of strategic planning and stuff. And I'm not saying that stuff is bad, but what ends up happening is that people begin to define what it is to serve Jesus among the people in a way that doesn't really have anything to do with serving Jesus among the people. They're looking for the way that they can make a mark or show success or those kinds of things. And the truth is that as a pastor, you're taking care of individuals, you're taking care of sheep, you're preparing them for the work of the ministry. And that was my job as a teaching pastor, was really mostly that. It was trying to make sure that when my sheep read their Bible, they had a better handle on things so they could know what God was calling them to. And I think for me, and Jay and I have been friends for a long time, and I'll say, as he said, I have been so thankful for this friendship because most people treat you with some kind of deference and they have expectations of who you are. And when I'm talking to younger pastors, I say, you need friends and you need advisors who aren't in the ministry, but you need somebody who really understands what it is to be you. And also, you need friends for your wife who understand what it is to be your wife. And I think those are two big things. Yeah.
Is your sense that is it harder today to be in ministry than say 20 years ago?
Chuck Colson said, growth doesn't denote God's blessing, and the lack of growth doesn't denote the lack of God's blessing. World metrics and kingdom metrics do collide. Jesus called us to the one, to go after that lost sheep, and I'm not sure that's treasured. I will tell you, some of the healthiest churches I've been in are churches under 100 people. Now, that doesn't mean the large mega churches are bad. Not at all. God's created them as well. I use a Navy analogy. There are the aircraft carriers that can do a lot. They provide air cover. And then there's those PT boats that can go upriver, that goes to places that the battleship or the cruiser or the destroyer could never get to. And I think we need them all. But as Tim alluded to, we just can't draw our self-worth and our purpose based off of numbers, because sometimes God calls me to go sit with that one and spend a lot of time, where the world will say, well, can you spend it with one or can you spend it with 99? Jesus said, go over here to the one.
Yeah, you asked if I think it's harder now than it was 20 years ago. I don't know that it's harder, it's different. The shift from COVID really changed so much about church. The fact that nobody was going to church, a lot of people realized they could get whatever they thought they needed online from anywhere. And a lot of people just haven't ever come back. And I think the difference is that community itself is not held as a high esteem. Isolation is a huge problem. But people don't want to talk about it being a problem. They just want to be like left alone. And so it's a different. We didn't used to have to encourage people to be in groups or to come to this thing or that and be together. And that's the problem now, getting people just to see the value of when we get together as the people of Jesus, then we can do things together that we can't do on our own. And I think that's just a different thing. I know that for me, I'm 71 and I've been helping build the new leadership team at our church. And they talk in a language I don't even want to think about, which is an internet. Who are these people? Because we have as many people watching us online as come to our services. I don't know who those people are. And yet, fortunately, these I call them kids, they're not that young, but these kids that are now in leadership are concerned about how do we minister to those people. And that's really different than what we were thinking about 20 and 30 years ago.
You know, Tim, 20 years ago, Grace decided to do something to help our food pantry. Mm-hmm. And it was called the Yellow Bags.
Right.
And so they would pass out yellow bags and folks would bring them the next week. And that really took our food ministry to a different level. And I think of the many partnerships that we've had, but it was mutual. And so then we're speaking into the life of Grace, and today they have the Grace Care Center that in small part was the engagement with Shepherd that they saw, and the challenge we gave to say you need to engage in your own community.
Yeah, I don't think it was in small part. I think it was in big part. The yellow bags We've gone to green bags, by the way. I think it had to do with some kind of marketing scheme to make the bags green. But that being beside the point, the yellow bags changed the culture of our church. They were on these stands all around, and they had notes in them that said what kind of food was best to bring. Mm-hmm. And it changed people's thinking about just going to the grocery store. And then we could say, and you're fortunate because you can go to the grocery store and buy this. And that changed a lot of the thinking. And then having people come down here and help in your pantry, when the time came for us to do what we've done on the north side, which is really a fairly unique ministry, we didn't have to do any convincing because we had so many people that had been involved here at Shepherd that understood the issue. And when we brought up the problems let's be honest, most people don't think about Hamilton County as having a lot of food insecurity. Mm-hmm. Well, we're feeding 850 to 1,000 families a week out of our grocery store. And it's grown over time, but who would have ever thought that would be the kind of need that was in our community? But our congregation was aware that need is everywhere by virtue of what we had done through Shepherd.
How did Shepherd and Grace connect originally?
I think it goes back 20 some years. We started connecting with Dave Rodriguez, senior pastor and friend to both of us. And then we found little ways to work together on different projects, and it began to catapult in ways. I think one of the most exciting things I can say in the partnership was a report I heard recently. How many of the most recent baptisms came through the care center?
Oh my goodness, yeah, that's a ton.
Folks who are coming to know Jesus, getting baptized because they're connecting to them with their physical need. Yes. They're dealing with healing to bring wholeness, the spiritual wholeness. And I heard that report recently, and I thought that's so exciting because it's a mutual celebration.
Right. Yes. And I think that's important because sometimes in church circles we talk about, do we focus on meeting physical needs or should we really focus on spiritual needs? And what I hear you saying is it's both, right? It's not either or.
Right. We learned right away that if we only focused on spiritual needs, we were going to most of the people that were coming to us had other needs. And I was going to say something. I remember there was a real catapulting of our partnership when we started doing our weekends of service. When we would shut the church down for the weekend, and we'd have projects with partner ministries in town, and we just send our people out. And one of the big things was to gather food, because we would put bags on thousands of people's doorsteps one week and then come back and get them the next. And sending that food down here and then people coming and sorting it out and all that really catapulted the connection.
Let me stop you here for just a second because I've served on an elder board at churches, and if the pastor came to the elders and said, we want to shut down the congregation, shut down the church on Sunday to go out and serve, I think many Christians would say, what are you doing? How did that come about?
I think we just thought it was a good idea. I mean, we had always wanted to get our people involved in the ministries that we were partnering with.
Yes.
We did not want to be a church that just wrote checks to people. And not that I don't think other churches are necessarily that way, but when you see a big church, and we're a big church, you think they've got lots of money and that kind of thing, but we're happy to have people's money, I suppose, but what we wanted was to see our people be engaged in the ministries that we felt were doing really good work, that we felt could partner with and wanted to partner with. And those, I'll never forget the first year we did Weekend of Service. Dave Rodriguez, who was a senior pastor, and I was a teaching pastor, it was dark. And it was time for people to come and go out, and we were all gather up and then go out.
Yes.
And we stood there and started watching the cars come in, And they just came and they came and they came, and we looked at each other and we both started to weep, because what had happened was that our people had gotten the vision enough
Yes.
to get up on a Saturday morning early, and then the next day on Sunday to go out and do something that was completely outside of their normal, I guess, stuff that they would do. And so many people even came here. They came here and then they fell in love with Shepherd, and then they wanted to be involved with this ministry. That's exactly what we wanted. That was exactly what we wanted.
Jay, what does it mean for Shepherd to have a partner like Grace?
I want to emphasize that entities don't partner, people do. And it was a relationship with Dave Rodriguez, with the Tim Ayres, with myself. It was multiple people connecting. Shepherd is an entity. Grace is a church entity. But it's the people. And when the people connect, we are all better. And what a great statement that is to the community when the church can work together.
What did that weekend of service, what did that do to the culture of Grace moving forward?
Well, we still do it. Well, it made it an expectation. It made it an excitement. And it also made it something that people just figured churches did. And I would say it's one of the best things we ever started.
We're both different and we're both better because of all of these things together.
Yeah. In all those years, I only had one person say to me they were upset that we were closing the church and not going to have service. And he said, and my family's going to go somewhere this weekend. We'll come on Saturday and serve, but we're going to church on Sunday. It was fine. And we were worried a lot of people would be upset about it, but nobody said, well, one guy were upset about it. And I think they saw it as an opportunity to live out what they claimed to be what was in their hearts, because they were followers of Jesus.
Worship doesn't have to happen in a pew.
What advice would you give to congregations in the suburbs that want to get involved in urban ministry?
I would say this: get to know someone. You have to develop mutual relationships. It wasn't all about what Grace is going to do for us. Shepherd had a role in helping impact Grace and help them as a church grow. And I think that's what it has to be seen as, is something mutual where we're both better because of that relationship.
Right, I would agree with that. I know that for us, we never had a notion that we could come and tell people what they needed to do. But we also had never had the notion that by virtue of just showing up one time and painting a room, that we'd actually done what we needed to do. No, we wanted relationships, and we wanted to learn from the people who were doing the work so that we could help them do what they were already doing well. And that's always been a value at Grace. And I think that we started with that value, and I think that was what was helpful to make this yearly weekend something that's successful.
Tim, I'm going to ask you to pray for the ministry leaders who are listening today. And then Jay, I'd ask you to pray and close this today.
Father, I come before you with a couple of requests. I pray, Lord, that in the heart of every person who's a ministry leader who listens to this, that you will give them a real sense that you are pleased with them. And you will also, Lord, provide people in their lives who support them and love them and know them, that you'll give them a real sense that they are not alone, and that they can count on both your Spirit to be present with them, but that you will also be present with them and with other people. And I pray, Lord, that you'll give them just enough successes in their ministry that they will feel your hand of blessing on them. And I also pray that in their failures, Lord, that they will turn to you, and in the things that are hard, Lord, that you will also move in their hearts in ways that they are comforted in a way that they never could have understood. Please, Father, I pray for each one of the ministry leaders who hears what we have talked about, that they will be encouraged and that they'll know that following you is worth giving their lives to.
May they know we are Christians by our love. May we live that to each other and to the world who doesn't know you. And may we be found faithful, good stewards of what you have given us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Tim and Jay. For 40 years, Shepherd Community has made a lasting difference in the lives of thousands and thousands of neighbors. The Shepherd team couldn't do that work without the support of donors, partners, and volunteers. To learn more about how you can help, please visit shepherdcommunity.org. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.